Well, it's time to start another 3-game week for most sides in EFL Championship as we look ahead to match week 13, kicking off this Friday night ahead to Sunday. So we're going to preview and predict all 12 games, and as always, we'll encourage you to do the same in the comments below. Get involved, give us your score predictions for the weekend, and if you beat or match my overall score with 3 points for a perfect score and 1 point for a correct outcome, then you will get a shout out in the next recap, which will be late on Sunday evening, looking ahead to the midweek fixtures. A quick caveat to say that next video will be slightly later than normal, partly because of the 3 PM kickoff on Sunday, but also because I'm at an FA Cup tie, so keep an eye out for that late evening. And on that subject, God knows what we're going to do in midweek, now one game's been moved to Thursday for TV. But for now, before we go and look ahead to match week 13, let's do the usual quick recap and have a look back at what happened last weekend, where yet again, as we can see, the home bankers let a lot of us down. One on the road in Leeds being held at Bristol City. Lots of 0-0s about. Burnley and West Brom, pretty much everyone had them to win. And 2 0-0s again frustrated the lot of you. However, I did pick up 2 perfect scores. A Championship's favourite scoreline for Derby Hull. A 2-0 win for Sheffield United against Stoke. And 1 point apiece for Sheffield Wednesday, Watford and Sunderland's win. Gives me 9 overall. And if we have a look down at the comments section, because of those bankers that went wrong, nobody made double figures this week and nobody made more than 9. So I am joint top of the table with one other, and it's Ojo, who's having a good season so far, been above me in the table most weeks. So well done to you. You are level with me at the top as we share the spoils on 9 points apiece. So can anyone make double figures this week? Can you all leapfrog me in a table again? Well, let's have a look ahead to match week 13. And it starts on Friday night with a game that I will be at and a game I'm a little bit fearful of, both in terms of lack of excitement and lack of result, because my club Luton Town host West Bromwich Albion, and for Luton it is the same place as they were in the Premier League last year, 3rd bottom. They are playing West Brom, who are still up in the playoff places but haven't won in 5 themselves. They were held pretty frustratingly by Cardiff at home 0-0. 3 0-0 draws in a row and only 1 goal in their last 5 matches for West Brom, and that was a pretty special long-range effort from Carlan Grant. West Brom really struggling to create lots of clear-cut chances and take them. That early season form from Josh Madger has dried up a little bit. They don't seem to have other goal threats in the team on a regular basis, and although they are dominating the games, although they are getting into those positions, they're getting a lot of set pieces and corners. They're not making the most of those chances, so it's a bit of a weird one because Luton are the complete opposite of that. If you take out the Watford game, the 3-0 win, every other match in the last 6 they've conceded 2 or more. There's a number of times they've given up leads, from 2-0 against Coventry and against Oxford. Of course, there was the frustration with the Coventry winner being very similar to the goal that Luton had disallowed against Sunderland in the midweek. But after 2 really good performances against Watford and Sunderland, against Coventry they were completely outclassed from start to finish. And of course the late red card, when already without the first choice back 3, another centre-half being out is not ideal. So while there is the mitigation that Luton's whole back 3 is out, there's still got to be a way to get around it, because they're one of only 3 sides to concede 20 goals this year. And to throw away a 2-goal lead twice in 5 games, not ideal, is it? So it's a tough one to call this, because you've got one of the best defensive records in the league. Well, the 3rd best v the 3rd worst. And you've also got a team that's struggling to score recently against a side in Luton that have scored 6 in their last 3. Adebayo's back scoring and they're looking an attacking threat with pretty much full strength options there. So I don't know where to go with this one. And as a result, I'm going to do what I usually do when I haven't got a clue. I'm going to sit on the fence with a Championship's favourite scoreline. I can't see it being 0-0 again. I can't see us keeping a clean sheet. And I can't see us not being a threat against West Brom. So I'm going to go for 1 goal apiece. Let's move on to Saturday and the 3 early kickoffs, starting with Blackburn Rovers versus Sheffield United. We've got a Blackburn side who have been excellent at home this season, but again, frustration on the road. They've drawn 2 blanks in a row, but a 1-0 defeat at Watford. Very frustrating day for them. 2nd half penalty conceded, but if we're being honest, there wasn't a lot in that game. There weren't many great chances for either side. Lots of half chances, a bit of a threat from both, but look, a draw might have been a fair result. Against West Brom at home, they were excellent. They've been great at home all season. And that's a problem, because Sheffield United have been excellent, They bounced back from their first 2 league defeats of the season with a really comfortable win at home to Stoke. Lovely scenes before the game as well. The tributes to George Baldock, but equally on the pitch, Sheffield United were excellent. I know they gave up a couple of good chances, and on another day, it might have been hit with a hammer blow. But overall, they look a very good side, and possibly after Leeds and Sunderland, the side that have impressed me most in terms of performances. So it does promise to be a good game, this, because I think Sheffield United will have a threat. I know bar the Leeds and Middlesbrough games, they're clean sheets galore, but Blackburn are a real threat at home at times. So I could see this being a low-scoring game, but I've got a feeling if Blackburn score first, we could get a crazy game. So I'm going to go against the grain here. There's a lot suggesting a 1-0 or a 1-1. I'm going to go big. I'm going to go for 2 goals apiece. Just a little bit of a hunch. No real basis to it. Let's move on to the second early kickoff, which is Oxford United versus Swansea City. Oxford ended the run of draws with a defeat against Sunderland, which is no real shame, is it? But it was a really good performance from the home side, and Oxford just couldn't do much about it. On another day might have been more, but they came up against better opposition, and away to a team that are at the top of the table is by no means going to define their season. Still a solid start for them. For Swansea, it's also no win in 6, but they've had a few less draws and a few more defeats. They've now not scored in 5 successive games, which is pretty awful going. They only conceded 1 against Millwall late on, a little bit of heartbreak in the 90th minute, but in a game where they were the better side, they dominated, they had all of the ball, most of the chances, loads of clear-cut chances as well. They just didn't make it count. They wasted so many, and in the end, they got punished for it. It's a really frustrating start for them because the performance there certainly warranted a victory, but in the end, they've gone and done what they usually do. They are restricting teams to very few chances, which is a positive and something we haven't always said about Swansea over the years. But given the fact that Oxford have been so excellent at home, bar that Sunderland game, they've had a goal threat most weeks. I think they could do the same to Swansea as Millwall. Set up tactically astute, be very hard to break down and find a goal on the counter. I'm going to go for Oxford United to nick this by 1-0. And the final early kickoff is Stoke City versus Derby County. The start for Narcy Palak continues to be pretty poor. No wins aside from that Pompey thrashing and a 2-0 defeat at Sheffield United. Look, wasn't a game you would expect them to win generally. It was a pretty poor performance. They were outplayed, albeit did have a couple of good chances to nick it. But after a 2-0 lead thrown away against Bristol City and a completely outplayed in the second half of that game, they were outplayed again, which is a worry. A spirited effort in the cup in midweek. Tom Cannon looking a threat again, but ultimately not a lot of the ball, not a lot of chances. It's the same old story for Stoke, and I maintain that I'm not sure it's the right decision to have swapped Schumacher for Palak. For Derby, 4 unbeaten now, 3 successive 1-1 draws after that QPR win. A bit like Oxford, just been a very solid start, really doing well, competing at championship level. And in that game against Hull, you can't really argue with a draw. Looked a fair result, both teams had chances, but ultimately it's another point on the board for Derby. It's a good little unbeaten record. They've done very well at home. On the road, prior to those Oxford and Millwall games, they'd struggled a bit more. But this is a Stoke side who aren't consistent either. So I'm going to go for another draw for Derby. And I'm going to go for the Championship's favourite scoreline again. They've pulled up 3 in a row. They got me 3 points at the weekend. I'm going for 1-1 at Stoke City v Derby. As we move on to the 3 PM kickoff starting in South Wales, it is Cardiff City versus Norwich City. Both of these sides drew at the weekend as well. We'll get Cardiff out the way, who showed very little ambition against West Brom. No shots on target. One decent breakaway during the game, but West Brom were the dominant force, as you'd probably expect. But in the end, Cardiff did well to dig in and get a point. It's now 3 clean sheets in a row, 4 in 5 since Errol Balut left. And you've got to say that the interim manager has made a huge difference there, just in getting them organised, but also in using that experience on the pitch and playing to its strength. And as a result, they look far more solid, far more robust, and they're pulling away from danger. They have done well in home games against sides with poorer away records, and generally over the years, that has been Norwich City. Now, they were involved in one of the games of the season on Sunday. It was a fabulous watch against Middlesbrough. Came back from 3-1 down. Would have been very different, I imagine, if that Tommy Conway penalty had gone in. A late stupid challenge from Kenny McLean is going to cost them in midweek, but Boyer Science is having goal of the season competitions every game. They just look a threat. They really look a threat going forward. Away from home, there still are those fragilities. I know they beat Derby, but let's be honest, 3 of the goals shouldn't have counted in that match. They beat Coventry, but they were outplayed. And then they picked up draws at Stoke and Preston, which I guess are decent results. But I'm quietly starting to be impressed with Norwich. We're starting to see the style. They're still a bit susceptible at the back. Can Cardiff exploit that? Or will Cardiff set up really solidly to try not to be beat? I think this could be one of the hardest games to call in midweek. I could easily see it going either way. But based on Cardiff's newfound solidity, I'm going to go for them to nick it, I'm going to go for Cardiff City by 2-1. But equally, I could see this being a draw, and I wouldn't be shocked if Norwich ran away with it. It's one of those games that's just impossible to call. As we move back to the north of England for our next few fixtures, we start with Hull City versus Portsmouth. Pompey having a sorry old time at the bottom, beaten by a screamer on Friday night against Sheffield Wednesday. More solid first half performance, but in a second, once Sheffield Wednesday turned up the gears, they looked second best. They really struggled with it. They've not got much of a goal threat, Pompey. I do feel for them a bit with the Bishop news just before the season, but they've not found a way to adapt. And they don't really have the identity that was so strongly associated with them last year. Back-to-back defeats after that first win, difficult to take. And while Hull have now gone 4 without a victory, we have seen when they've been at home to the poorer sides in a division, they've managed to find a way, and even on the road to be fair. Against Cardiff, against QPR, when they went away to Stoke, we saw them get those responses. And I think Pompey will give them the time to play their football. If they press high, they might be able to stop them and nick one on the counter. I just think Hull will be able to carve them open. So for this game, despite Hull's disappointment at a 1-1 draw at Derby, it's been an okay start. There's so many teams bunched in the middle. I think Hull get back to winning ways in this one. I'm going to go for them to win pretty comfortably. And although I think they will concede, I'm going to go for 3-1 for the home side. Into the second half, and after last weekend, this becomes tricky because it is another one that's famously a home banker. Well, that didn't go well last week, did it? It is Leeds United versus Plymouth Argyle. Let's give a little bit of credit to Plymouth because they had 2 pretty awful performances against Cardiff and Millwall. The first half against Preston, it looked like the wheels were falling off the wagon. They came out in the second half, letting an early goal at 3-0. The fans were against them. They were falling away a bit. But what a response. They went for it. They went aggressive. And they found a way back into the game to draw 3-3 with Preston. A really good result in the circumstances. Andre Gray getting his first goal will be a real boost for them. Morgan Whittaker obviously popping up with another big moment. And they are the sort of results that can turn your season. But regardless of that, we have seen that Plymouth away from home have really struggled this year, particularly against the top sides. For Leeds, it was their own struggle on the road at Bristol City. Just felt like no matter what they did, they couldn't find the back of the net. On another day, they could have won that by 4 or 5. They had so many great chances. Bristol City offered nothing going forward. But we've said this about Leeds a few times. Have they got that player who can put the ball in the back of the net every single week consistently? I'm not sure they have. That's all they are away from being the dominant force in this division, in my opinion. But as a result, they are dropping silly points. But it is still a very long unbeaten run now. I'm going to go for Leeds to win this game. I know we were tripped up a couple of times last week. But I don't think Plymouth are solid enough defensively. I know they've restricted size to 1 at times on the road. But I'm going to go a little bit higher here. I think this will be a comprehensive, solid 2-0 win. And Leeds United will have no threat on their goal at all. That's my opinion for this one. And the next one features 2 sides involved in absolute thrillers at the weekend and a repeat of the 22-23 Championship playoff semi-final. It is Middlesbrough versus Coventry City. Middlesbrough are going to be absolutely mortified that they didn't win the game against Norwich. From 3-1 up with that penalty kick, let's be honest, it looked like game over. If that had gone in, it would have been 4-1. Norwich fans would have been leaving. It would have been a very different day. As it is, they probably feel a little bit fortunate not to have lost it. Without Kenny McLean's late red card, Norwich were in the ascendancy. There was only one team who looked like winning it. I know I've said it before, but Seny Dieng, for me, he is a little bit of a liability back there. He makes mistakes, and the goal shouldn't have gone in, that third one. I don't know how it really got through him. Ball Science 2, you can't do anything about. But Middlesbrough, yes, the positive is they took some chances on the counter. Probably still should have had more, though, the penalty and a couple of others too. But it's another game, ultimately, where they've dominated the stats, dominated the majority of the match, and found themselves not on the winning side. So definitely something to be aggrieved about there. And it is the sort of game, again, that mentality-wise, you've got to be thick-skinned to overcome. On the flip side of that, Coventry came from 2-0 down to beat Luton. Even at 2-0 down, Coventry played brilliantly in that match. One of the best performances from them this season. Lots of clear-cut chances, didn't take a couple of them. Kaminsky made a couple of good saves for Luton, but ultimately, Despite the controversy surrounding the last goal, there is no doubt whatsoever that Coventry deserved to win that game. So fair play to them. Going to be a good game this on paper. It just comes down to which team takes their chances. And the problem is this season, they've both been so hit and miss that we just don't know. So I'm going to stick my neck on the line and say Middlesbrough nick it 2-1. I wouldn't be surprised to see either team nick it by a goal. If one of them finds their shooting boots and plays well, could easily be a 3 or 4-1 this. You just have no idea what to predict. It's a much tougher weekend to call, but I'm going for 2-1 to Borough. Let's move on to another side who gave up the lead at the weekend. It is Preston North End versus Bristol City. An uncharacteristic third clean sheet in 5 games for Bristol City, albeit it was very much against the run of play against Leeds. A 0-0 draw where it was one-way traffic. It could have been 3 or 4 goals. Great scenes before the game. The fans, brilliant for Liam Manning's return. However, on the pitch, it could have been ugly. If it weren't for Lady Luck, missed chances and whatever else from Leeds, it could have been a very hefty scoreline. So a little bit of a false representation of the game, but Bristol City now 6 unbeaten, albeit 5 of those are draws and 1 was a smash and grab win at Borough. It's still an unbeaten run. And maybe you could say Bristol City are looking consistent because they're drawing nearly every game. As a Preston, which they'll be a little bit upset about because they were 2-0 up against Norwich last midweek, drew 2-2. They were 3-0 up against Plymouth with 50 minutes gone on Saturday, and they drew 3 apiece. It's not the Preston we're used to in terms of solidity, defending a lead, but I guess you have to look at the positive and say there is a goal threat now, the likes of Greenwood getting into aggressive positions and scoring regularly. But after 3 clean sheets in a row, this is not what Paul Heckingbottom would have been expecting. Really weird game that one against Plymouth and makes this a lot harder to call. I'm going to go back to the old tried and trusted low-scoring Preston game. Bristol City are virtually impossible to call, so we're going to base it off the other team. I'm sure loads of you will go for a Championship's favourite scoreline here, and I was very tempted to. But I'm going to edge Preston to win this by 1-0. I just think, overall, I would trust them slightly more at home. And their last 2 home games, in fairness, before that Norwich one, a 1-0 win against Coventry, a 3-0 one against Watford. They keep clean sheets at home. Bristol City don't keep a huge amount on the road, so Preston will edge it on that basis for me. Into the final third, it is struggling QPR against table toppers Sunderland. Now, this is the sort of game that Championship Predictions is made for. We all have to go for a Sunderland win. We all know it, and we all know that there's every chance that it will all go wrong for us. QPR got a 0-0 draw against Burnley, again showing very little ambition, no shot on target, only managed 2 in the whole game, barely touched the ball, barely creating an attacking chance, defended 16 corners, and I guess the positive is you can say they were putting their bodies on the line, they were still fighting for the manager defensively, but it's just not clicking at the moment. A really gutsy effort at the back. I thought Steve Cook in particular had a very good game, but QPR aren't going to win many games the way they're playing at the minute. It's been a really shoddy start to the season for them. Haven't won since August. That win at Luton, their only one of the year. Whereas for Sunderland, it's now 4 wins out of 5 and that draw against Leeds United. And to be fair against Oxford, it was just a really comfortable, solid home performance from a good side. They've shown all sides of their game in the last week. That gritty win at Luton where they had to defend their own barrage of set pieces and balls into the box. And then against Oxford, they've shown they can keep the ball, they can dominate a game, and they can be aggressive on the front foot. So there are really good signs coming from Sunderland at the moment. But they have had those slip-ups on the road this year. We go back to the Plymouth game, the Watford game. They've had these moments, which does make this hard to call. As I mentioned at the start of this preview, we have to go for a Sunderland win. But I'm just not confident about it. We've been doing these for too long not to be worried about this game. I'll go for Sunderland by 2-1. The final game on Saturday is back in Yorkshire. It is Sheffield Wednesday versus Watford. Sheffield Wednesday, a good win at Pompey thanks to that Smith screamer, followed by a spirited effort at Brentford in the Cup in midweek, by the way. Rotated heavily for that game and obviously lost out on penalty kicks, but a really good performance, shows the quality of the squad. And overall, they've not been doing too badly. They're starting to push up the table now. They're picking up results against the side you would probably expect them to. The only frustration recently is probably that draw against Swansea, where on another day, they would have liked to have offered more and nicked it. For Watford, same old story, isn't it? They've got to find a way away from home. At home, they look very solid, very good, and they're up in 7th as a result of that. Talk about Tom Cleverley's job being under threat after the Luton game. For any other club would have been premature, but obviously this is Watford we're talking about. But a decent effort second half against Leeds, and again, a gutsy 1-0 win at home to Blackburn. Didn't offer up a lot. And it's weird because they look so solid at home most of the time. But away from home, they're just a completely different team. And that's why for this one, I have to go for a Sheffield Wednesday win. I do think they might concede, but I'm going to go for it regardless. I'm going to go for Sheffield Wednesday to win by 2-0. And the final game is on Sunday afternoon, and I'm not sure there will be that many tuning into this one, given the fact there's FA Cup ties and Premier League games as well. Bit of a bizarre TV choice. It is Millwall versus Burnley, and this game is between two sides that have been very solid in recent weeks, but don't offer up a huge amount in front of goal. So for Millwall, their last 5 games, they've scored 3, conceded 2. A great late 1-0 win away at Swansea in a game where they were second best. If Swansea had had their shooting boots on, it could have been out of sight well before that. Obviously nicked a 1-0 at home to Plymouth the week before that. And for Burnley, very similar start to last season. Draw, win, conceding next to no goals that whole game. The only one they've conceded in their last 6 matches. But equally, they've drawn 3 blanks as well. And away from home, a couple of frustrating days. The Oxford 0-0 being one. And at home to QPR last time, where they were dominant but just couldn't put the ball in the net. It does make you think for this game, there are only 4 possible scorelines. 0-0, 1-0, and 1-0 either way. I'm going to go ambitious. We're on TV. We're Sunday afternoon. We've got an exciting game in prospect. Both teams are going to live up to the occasion. I'll go for it to be 1-1. I'll go for the highest score of the 4. I just don't see this being an entertaining game. I'm obviously going to be an FA Cup tie instead, but if you do have a choice of TV viewing, I'm not sure this would be the first one to watch. Just my opinion, it'll probably be a thriller now, but I'll finish just as I started with the Championship's favourite scoreline at the Den. So with that out the way, let's have a quick recap of what I've gone for in match week 13. I have both started and finished with a Championship's favourite scoreline for Luton West Brom on Friday and for Millwall Burnley on Sunday. One team to score 3 goals, which is Hull City at home to hapless Portsmouth. And I've also gone for a thriller at the start of Saturday with Blackburn and Sheffield United against all the odds being a 2-2 draw and an exciting one. Those are just my predictions for match week 13. Now, do you agree or disagree with them? Let me know in the comments below and give me your predictions for this weekend's action. We will be back a bit later than usual on Sunday evening as we look ahead to a full midweek fixture list in the Championship. I've not decided how we're going to split the next week yet because, of course, there is that road game on Thursday night. We'll work it out when we get to it. Come and join us for that on Sunday. Make sure you put a thumbs up on the video and subscribe and turn that notification bell on if you want to stay up to date with everything, including some little match day clips from both FA Cup ties we're at this weekend. Hopefully we'll see a few giant killings, but for now, thank you very much for watching as always. I hope your team gets on well this weekend, and I'll see you on Sunday when we do it all again.